Good afternoon. It is 4:30 on October the 25th. We will begin our work session for the Board of Trustees for the Greenwood LaFleur Consolidated School District. I'm going to ask that we bow our head for a moment of silent prayer. Amen. Colleagues, you have the agenda before you. Is there anything that we need to add before we get started? Please take a moment to peruse it. Mr. Brooks, any additional items you need to add? Any additional items you need to add?
No.
Mrs. Lewis?
I think we need to review policy. Let me see if it's on here first. I don't think it is. Policy JCDAE.
Can you repeat that?
JCDAE.
You have that, Attorney Palmer? All right, any other additions, colleagues? Hearing none. Mr. Brooks. Guess we'll start with number 3. We can start with number 3, Mr. Brooks, if that's okay? Yeah. All right, Attorney Palmer, do you have that policy up yet? That Ms. Lewis is just...
I'm about to pull it up.
Okay. Anything specifically, Ms. Lewis, regarding that policy?
It's the policy regarding enhanced carry.
Would you like for Attorney Palmer to just go over it, or is there a specific concern about it?
There's a specific concern as it relates to an item that's on the agenda.
Okay.
Ms. Lewis, is that the public comment?
Speaking to your...
No, let me see. I'm not looking for, not the, oh, see, it's not, that's what it deals with, but not the public. It is number 10,
What you mentioned, the public comment?
but it's not per se about public comments. It's the issue that he's bringing before the board.
So, for whatever reason, I'm hooked up to the district.
Oh, yeah, it's going to block you. Wi-Fi, yeah.
Right, it's, oh, it finally pulled up. So, Ms. Lewis, what I can tell you on the front end without just looking at the policy up front, which I'm in the process of doing, people come up, and I don't know this gentleman. I probably would know him if I saw him, but people, if you read his if you read his application to be before this board on a public comment, he references 2 things. One was an Attorney General opinion of the Mississippi Enhanced Concealed Carry Permit Policy. There is no such thing as that. I have no idea what he's talking about. And he also...
Attorney Palmer.
Yes, ma'am.
There is an Attorney General's opinion on that.
Is he saying... Okay,
I spoke with MSBA today,
gotcha.
and so what I was told is that our policy cannot contradict this Attorney General's opinion.
Well, I'll tell you this, again, I don't know what Attorney General's opinion he's talking about. What I've learned is that if a person is making allegations that so and so or such entity or such person is in violation of the law, my first question is, what law are you talking about? What policy are you talking about? I had a situation today, a woman came in saying, well, this statute says this, that, and the other. And I went on my phone and pulled up the statute. And I said, ma'am, I said, you reference this policy or the statute. I said, if you read subsection E, it says, and I quoted that subsection. I said, that doesn't even apply to what you're talking about. It doesn't apply. She want to argue me down. I said, the language is clear. It does not apply. But she wants to make the argument that based on what she wants to happen, that the law says such and such and such. Now, I don't know, again, what Attorney General's opinion he's referring to, but what I can tell you is Attorney General opinions are not the law. They are persuasive opinions by a political subdivision, which generally, if followed, you have the protection of following the Attorney General's opinion. But the Supreme Court is very clear that just because the Attorney General issues an opinion, it is not the law. And a lot of people say, well, the Attorney General says this or that, and that's fine, but that does not mean that that's the law. I just put up a case last Thursday. That case in the Supreme Court decision says there are Attorney General's opinions that disagree with our finding. But it reiterated that Attorney General's opinions are persuasive opinions. They are not the law. So again, when a person comes to me and say, well, you're in violation of such and such and such, my question to them is, what are you referring to? Do you have a copy? And if they do have a copy, then allow us to research that issue and see whether or not we're in compliance or not.
Okay, and I guess my question would be, and I can forward you what I was sent today, is did anybody in the district, in fact, investigate the claim?
Yes. Yes.
What was the outcome?
Dr. Coleman, will you speak to that?
So, in short, we had a private citizen who came to one of our football games with a fully loaded weapon, and we denied the private citizen entrance into the game. The citizen is or does have a permit to carry, but we quoted the policy that Mrs. Lewis gave us, and we also quoted the Mississippi High School Sports Association's activities manual. We did, in fact, give the private citizen a copy of both our policy and Mississippi High School Sports Activities Association's guidance, and our policy is in line with that. In an effort to keep the district safe, we cannot allow citizens to enter our facilities, to include our fields and stadiums and gyms, with loaded weapons, because we do not know what their intent is. But indeed, he provided his permit to carry, but it still violated our policy and state guidelines as it relates to state sports activities.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Coleman.
Yes, ma'am.
Attorney Palmer, would you further investigate that? Because I did review the policies, and our policies does not mention anything about enhanced permit to carry. Now, safety is our ultimate goal, but, I mean, this guy to me, he has a point. So that's why I'm asking you if you would further investigate it, because there's a difference between a regular permit and an enhanced to carry permit. And I think that's what he indicated he had.
Yes, ma'am, I certainly will.
Okay.
But it really would have been instructive if he is relying on a certain authority to have provided that. And again, I know that based on what I read, he is prospectively coming before the board at our next board meeting to have a conversation. But it would help if whatever authority he's relying upon to provide the district with a copy so we can compare what he has with apparently for what he has already been presenting.
Okay, then the district would need to contact him and advise him of that, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Well, Attorney Palmer, I disagree, because if I'm coming before the board, I need to bring all of my supporting documentation versus having the district contact me to say what I am expected to bring and present. The judge doesn't tell you what to bring to court, right?
That's correct. Well, it depends. Now, as an attorney, judges have full right to put forth expectations for the attorneys. Now, as a judge, an attorney wouldn't tell the judge what to do in his court or his or her courtroom, but certainly judges have discretion in order to lay down expectation for those individuals that are practicing law before his or her court.
Do we know anything else, Ms. Lewis?
No.
All right. Mr. Brooks, number 4. Any other policies, colleagues? We're fine with the policies. Number 4, Mr. Brooks.
Approval of the October 3rd, 2023 regular board meetings, October 11th, 2023 special call meeting, and the October 25th, 2023 work session minutes.
Attorney Palmer, you will have had opportunity to review those during our meeting, before our meeting. Okay. And colleagues, if you find any information that may not be accurate, certainly feel free to make a note of that, and we'll address it at the board meeting. Number 5, Mr. Brooks.
Interim superintendent report. Interim superintendent will provide report and updates. Definitely have more at the board meeting, but this is the only one I had, which is the one on the second page, on page 18, for the work session.
All right. Colleagues, are there any questions regarding page 18 of the superintendent's report?
Yes, I do have a question.
Turn your mic on, Doc.
Okay.
The gentleman listed, is this an employee?
Yes,
Okay. Did he apply for the grant?
I think his supervisor did, yeah.
Okay.
So is this,
The district did, yeah.
this is all,
Well, he said that some additional documents will be added, Ms. Lewis. Page 18 is the only one that's included at this time.
Thank you.
Any other questions about 18, colleagues? Seeing none. And Mr. Brooks, the additional documents, we'll have them by, I think Ms. Remmer releases it on Friday. We'll have it by then?
Yes.
All right, so everybody can have an opportunity to review them. Number 6,
Approval of the timeline to hire a superintendent.
I'll defer to either Mrs. Lewis or Dr. Moore regarding number 6.
Good afternoon, evening, colleagues. This is a proposed, at our last special call meeting, it was asked about a superintendent hire timeline. This is a proposed timeline that is readily available for discussion, additions, changes, or adjustments.
Go ahead, Ms. Lewis.
so looking at the timeline, there's going to be some time in here between December 31st and whenever the next person is hired. What is the proposal that will be done to take care of another interim?
Well, colleagues, we'll, during the board meeting on Tuesday, we can go into executive session to discuss the matter further. To your point, based upon Mr. Brooks's contract end date and the timeline presented, there will certainly be a gap and a need to identify an interim superintendent. And I think it's certainly imperative that the board identifies someone sooner than later to provide some level of continuity as Mr. Brooks leaves the role and that new person assumes the role. Again, if that is okay with the board. Feedback, colleagues? So, Ms. Remmer, can we have that added, interim superintendent? Or can we just leave it as is for a job vacancy, because that, in essence, is what it would be, correct, Attorney Palmer?
From my understanding, what is being addressed will be encompassed in that particular item.
Okay, so it should be fine. Is that what you're saying, Attorney Palmer?
Yes.
Any other feedback, colleagues? Mrs. Abraham?
I want to ask about the date.
Turn your mic on.
Date of the next board meeting is the 7th, is that correct?
No, I think that date was changed.
14.
It's the 14th, okay, okay. I was concerned that it was changed to not the day of the elections. Okay, thank you.
And is that reflective on our board calendar online? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good point of observation, Ms. Abraham. Thank you for that. Any other feedback, colleagues, regarding the timeline, or we'll just discuss it further?
Colleagues, if you will just peruse it, if you see any changes that you feel will be needed, just email me and let me know, and I could make the adjustments. Thank you.
And thank you for your time, Dr. Moore, in putting this together. Number 7, Mr. Brooks.
Number 7, Southern Procurement.
Is there any information regarding this? I don't see anything in our packet. Will we be provided with the information for? Okay, somebody coming before us, okay. And do you all know by chance what it's in reference to?
Providing services to save the district money as far as
Speaking to the mic. Speaking to the mic again.
providing services to save the district money and with constructions and designs and stuff.
Okay. And just in the event that the person, wants to present something, if they can provide it to you all by Friday, so it can be included in our pack. But if not, we certainly understand if they want to just provide that at the time that they come before the board. Number 8, Mr. Brooks.
16th session report.
Good evening.
Hi, Ms. Washington.
What we have, we're gonna have 2 bids that we're gonna try to open, on the 14th. They have till 3 o'clock to, get those bids in to us. And you see, it's gonna be, let's see, 1622 2 West and 2621 1 West. One is 549.8 acres and the other one's 159.8 acres of agriculture land. We also have, one lease, well, actually several leases in which we need to cancel due to non-payment. This gentleman hadn't paid since, I think, let's see, December 15, 2021. He has not made a payment. I called him. He said he had a funeral to attend and that the young lady just forgot to pay, but I haven't heard anything from him since then. So I was trying to recoup some funds, but we need to go ahead and terminate those leases. I think he has 4 different leases. They are small sections. I went out on the property to see what it looked like. There is some that was actually farmed, not a whole lot, but some of it was farmed. All of these are supposed to be agriculture, but there's not a whole lot of agricultural land, but it's more trees. So they told me that he more than likely was doing more hunting than he was actually plowing the land. So, but again, he hadn't paid, so, but I do want to go ahead and re-advertise and let whoever knows that, there's not a whole lot of farming land, but a lot of them are already familiar with the area. But if they want to, they could go ahead and bid on it, if the board allows us to advertise for it again.
I do have a question,
Okay.
Interim Superintendent Brooks. Miss Washington, we are trying to re-advertise the 3rd one, correct?
Yes.
I'm looking at the bid for number 2,
Okay.
for 159.8 acres. I just want to know if and I understand that we bid, but what is the going rate
Great. Okay, I think on
for
last,
acreage?
yeah, on last month I gave you a sheet, and I don't have that little cheat sheet with me, but it told you what each county, surrounding county was doing, as far as acreage is concerned and the amount that they collect per acre. So I still have that form. I'll give you another copy before the next board meeting.
No,
so
if
can
you
see it.
gave one, you said you gave one
Yes.
at the last meeting?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And I just want to know if we are getting our money's worth from the leases
Based
for
on
the
what-
amount of acreage.
Right. Based on what I researched, we are kind of like at the upper echelon of that, of receiving money, based on what the others are doing. So, others are doing, you have maybe one or two that's doing better, but most of them are doing worse. So, but I don't think it's fair to anybody who has that farming land not to pay a decent price for it. And I think a lot of them, they were not decent prices that we're receiving. So they're not just getting over on this district, other districts as well, is what I can see.
Mrs. Lewis.
Ms. Washington, what are the legal ramifications for collecting those outstanding monies?
That I would have to get with the attorney. You have the right, like the gentleman did, farm. Somebody farmed that a partial of the land. Normally, and like I say, he will, he can deal with the legal issue, part of it, legalistic portion of it. But like I say, normally we could go after him as far as trying to get our monies that he owes. But he also had a outstanding bill of $45,000 back when he had the land before. He had all of it, and he hadn't paid. And so I didn't really understand why he was even allowed to bid again, even though they broke the land out. But he didn't pay before, so why would he pay now?
So, Mrs. Washington, to Mrs. Lewis's point, we definitely need you to get with Attorney Palmer to see how can the district recoup those lost funds. Also, you mentioned that you had a phone conversation with the leaseholder. Is there an official method of communication that needs to be sent so that we can cover ourselves as we move forward with terminating the lease? Like an official letter or something, Attorney Palmer?
That would certainly be my recommendation, preferably a certified letter, just to indicate that we made our best efforts to try to resolve the issue. Phone calls are good, and I think Ms. Washington does a very good job in trying to communicate with people the best way she can. Sometimes they're accessible, sometimes they're not. But a certified letter is generally one of the better options as far as crossing your T's and dotting your I's as far as communication is concerned. Because at the end of the day, you have proof showing that you did reach out to them, that the document was received via certified mail, and for whatever reason, if that person did not take appropriate action, that they failed to do so.
So you'll get with Attorney Palmer, Ms. Washington, on that?
And I do have one other issue that just came up. You have someone who's trying to sell their house, and those 99-year leases are going to expire in about 23. And those 99-year leases will expire in about 23 years. And so it's gonna come up a lot more about how we have to handle those situations. I spoke with Mr. Cheney at the Secretary of State office, and he informed me that we cannot extend any leases because most of the banks are requiring that you have a 30-year plus 10 term on a lease before they would actually give you financing. And so that option is definitely out. He said the board had no right to increase those leases simply because, one, this was a process back where the board gave the authority to the county supervisors, and the county supervisors are the one who entered into those lease agreements with the people who have those homes out there on Linden, Strong, those different areas over there where that 16 section land is. And but he said that, short of them canceling, the owner cancels that lease, that's the only way we could reinstate a new lease. And there's a 5% amount based on the value of the land that person would have to be responsible from if they cancel that lease and going forward. So they want one kind of rushed. I'm not rushing the board. I will make sure that we, one, cross all I's and cross all the T's and dot the I's, just like you said, before we move. And I definitely would have to have something in writing specifically stating that that lease owner or leaseholder is actually terminating that lease.
Any questions, colleagues?
I have a question
Mrs.
for
Lewis.
Attorney Palmer.
Yes,
Is
ma'am.
there a statute of limitations on that outstanding 45,000? On trying to collect it?
Generally, Ms. Lewis, generally with any,
Is what?
I think your mic went out, Attorney.
it's generally 3 years
Okay.
for
So
a
we are
breach of
approaching
contract. Yes, ma'am.
that. Okay,
Based on what I've heard Ms. Washington indicate.
okay.
Now, the challenge, I can tell you, the challenge is going to be, even if we were to go to court and get a judgment for said amount for breach of contract, the challenge is going to be the collection part of it. How are we going to be able to get the money from the person who was in default to the school district? That's going to be the main challenge. There are some options, but those options are just as feasible as the availability of the funds. So for instance, you can't squeeze blood from a turnip, so if you got someone who doesn't have the money is not readily available in some bank or some other location, it's going to be very difficult to try to collect that money.
But that's the purpose of a judgment as well too, right? Because if this individual reaches out to another lending agency to continue to farm, that's gonna be an issue, because that judgment would have to be satisfied, I would think, before he could get another loan.
Yes, ma'am, it would affect the person if, let's say for instance, if they were going to, let's say, well, the most prevalent situation is if there is a lien on that particular piece of property. So for instance, if you're trying to buy a piece of property and there is some outstanding judgment against you, then that could be a red flag for that person to get some kind of funding from a bank. But again, while that is a very truthful scenario, again, the ultimate thing is, how does the district get its money? Because it may be a hardship for the person who's in default in making other transactions, but the other question is, how does the district get its money from this particular person that defaulted on the contract? And again, if they don't have $45,000 in a bank or some other institution that you can do a garnishment on, you'll be limited as far as your options as trying to get that money. You may have a judgment, but a judgment is different from the actual liquid funds.
Well, I just wanted to say that because so many times this district ends up with the short end of the stick. You know, we say somebody might be in a hardship when actually they may not be, and they're putting us in a hardship. So, thank you.
So noted. You're welcome.
Number 9, Mrs. Brooks.
Bailey update. Mr. Pippin.
Good evening.
Good afternoon.
Here, you can use this.
Can you hear?
Yes, we
Yeah,
can.
we can.
I'll be brief and go over our projects. First of all, on the plumbing renovation work, that's going well. If you'll recall, we've actually been substantially complete with the base contract work for a while. The contractor's working those punch list items and also working allowance items. One of them recently discussed was painting of the restrooms at the schools, and I think they've completed painting at about 5 of the 12. So that's going well. And we got a little bit allowance money left where they're trying to do some other little things here and there to complete those restrooms, but it's going along well. On the window project, if you'll remember, that was awarded to Ramsey Construction. I think they're out of Ridgeland, Mississippi. That contract has now been fully executed. We'll get the pre-construction meeting hopefully scheduled for next week or the week after and get them started on that work. On the carpet project that you also recently approved, that too, the contract's been fully executed. We've had the pre-construction meeting, and we actually had a meeting today with Mr. Brooks Dr. Coleman, to talk about how we're going to implement this work to minimize impact on instruction and activities at school. Obviously, they haven't started any work yet, but we've got the ball rolling. And then last but not least, I wanted to talk to you about the HVAC project. That too is progressing at Threadgill Elementary. Things are primarily focused. They're also working at the other schools, and they're doing things like running condensate lines, refrigerant lines, insulating the lines, installing some equipment and that. It's going fairly well. I will point out, and I've got at least one person, I've got two, Mr. Hodges and Mr. Blaylock on the line. They're with the design team. If you'll recall, at Greenwood High School, we ran into a problem with electrical issues. We've encountered the same type issues at, I'm drawing a blank down, Threadgill Primary. Yeah, Primary. And it's going to be a similar thing where we've got to do some electrical improvements. As I understand it, it's with services to the building as well as maybe some panels. And I believe they've told me it's estimated at somewhere around $115,000. We would next board meeting on the 14th for action on that. As I mentioned, I've got two of the design team members on the line. If you have any questions, they would be better suited to answer them than I am.
So, Mr. Pipper, thank you for coming. The 115, do we still have that in our ESSER funds, or we've exhausted all of those funds?
With ESSER funds remain the same, but I do know that the superintendent, they would like to do some other things. I think we had about 800,000,
Okay.
828 allocated. I think he has some other priorities, but there could be monies available. Yes.
Okay. Colleagues, any questions?
Do you have a question?
Yes, ma'am.
When did you say?
Turn your mic on.
When did you say Ramsey Construction received the offer?
I believe we received bids on August 31st, and the contract got fully executed last week.
That was after the pre-construction meeting, or that?
No,
That happened yet?
schedule it hopefully next week.
Okay, how often does your agency have those pre-construction meetings?
The pre-construction meeting is usually held right after the contract has been fully executed, but prior to them starting work, it kind of serves as their notice to proceed. All the contractual things, pay applications, how to handle submittals, all the, nuts and bolts and details of implementing the contract.
Okay. Thank you.
Just one question.
Yes, sir.
What projects have you completely completed? Like the wiring, the HVACs,
Nothing is fully complete as per the contract at this point. The closest one you have that's complete would be the restroom project. As I mentioned, all the base contract work at each of those schools is substantially complete. That means they completed the work as outlined in those documents. It's been inspected by the design team engineers. They've created a punch list for those base contract work. If you remember, in that contract, you had allowance money of, I would think, $405,000 to use at the district's discretion to do other things. One of those things was the lift station that we talked about, a couple months ago. As a matter of fact, that work will be implemented they'll start on it the week before Thanksgiving and do the actual transition over Thanksgiving break. So to answer your question, none of them are fully complete at this point. The restroom project is the one closest. It's like I said, work is substantially complete.
And Mr. Pipper, I will just share that I did have opportunity to see the work that was completed at Bankston in one of the males' bathrooms. And it did look nice with the urinals and I think the partitions.
Some of the tile on the wall.
I didn't pay attention to the tile, but they did look nice. Of course, my concern, as I shared before, was we had new faucets on sinks that looked like they were put in 1980, but that's neither here nor there. But the work that had been done did look nice.
As I mentioned, they've completed painting at 5 of the schools,
Okay.
so should look even a little better.
Yes, sir.
And there'll be some ceiling work done. I think ceiling work maybe at Green High School, and we're waiting on Mr. Howard to tell us what others will be next in priority.
Gotcha. Any other questions, colleagues? Hearing none? Thank you, Mr. Pipper.
Thank you.
Thank
We've discussed number 10 already as part of the policy updates and review. So we'll move on to number 12.1, if that's okay with you, Mr. Brooks.
Yes. Adult meal increase.
And colleagues, that's on page 27. So do you have a ballpark figure of how much this increase would be from what it currently is?
Yes, for the breakfast, 30 cent, and for the lunch, 75 cent. Am I right, Ms. Totten?
Breakfast 30 cent and lunch 75? Okay. Colleagues, any questions or concerns? Hearing none. 12.2, Mr. Brooks.
Delta Health Alliance grant.
And this is an amendment, correct?
Correct.
Colleagues, this can be found page 29 through, looks like 33, if I'm not mistaken, as it pertains to the amendment or the changes. Are there any questions?
Are there any additional personnel being hired?
I think it is part of the personnel report.
What position are we hiring?
Can we get to the person? Can we do the personnel?
Oh, okay.
So we're gonna wait, Ms. Johnson, until we get to personnel to discuss that. But would these changes affect those persons in the recommendation? Okay, all right. Any other questions, colleagues? Ms. Lewis, make sure you make a note of that. All right, 12.3, Mr. Brooks.
Disposal of bus fleet.
Any questions, colleagues? Now, Mr. Brooks, I did see where one bus was purchased in like 2011 or something. I'm just curious as to why it is being jumped so early. I think it's one even 2013 and 2012. I would just expect the longevity of those buses to be a little bit more. No, Dr. Coleman, okay, I stand corrected. Thank you. Any other questions, colleagues?
Some of the buses, probably one of the reasons that a lot of those buses were purchased used
Okay.
already.
But a value of 81,000, that's not used, is it, Coach?
No, not
Dr.
really.
Dr. Cole,
It's been in just one vehicle,
81,000, that's a
just
used.
one unit.
Okay. Okay. So Dr. Coleman said the cost to repair the bus would actually be more than the value of the bus. Labor. Okay. Any other questions, colleagues?
Dr. Coleman, do we have anyone on staff that repairs buses? Okay. Okay.
All right. No other questions?
And we are getting parts off the buses before we establish them.
I got to pull apart.
Yeah. And we do plan on trying to sell the buses to make some money.
Okay. 12 point, I'm sorry.
I
Go
have
ahead.
a question. Have we tallied and proposed the amount that we may be able to receive from those parts? We haven't counted those.
So, Dr. Coleman said over 20,000 is the estimated amount that the district is expected to potentially gain from the selling of the parts from the
For
buses.
all the buses?
It's about, you said 1,200 per bus, and that's just for parts, right? Oh, the bus itself. Okay, we stand corrected. Okay. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Abraham.
That would be the next thing
Okay, I'm sorry.
on the agenda.
I apologize. 12.4. Thank you, Mr. Brooks. 12.4.
Disposal of bus fleet. This is where we're talking about selling the buses.
Okay. And Dr. Kobe said about $1,200 per bus is what is expected.
But separate from the parts, right?
Well, I think,
Okay, that's what I was
so
thinking.
they'll only pull parts for district use, and whatever the district does not need, it'll remain on the vehicle and be sold or salvaged. Okay. Is that clear, Ms. Abraham?
It's clear, it seems a little low, but it's clear.
Any other questions, colleagues? All right, 12.5, Mr. Brooks.
Delta Gear Up, work plan and budget for 2023, 2024.
And we currently have a MOA or MOU with Gear Up, correct?
Yes.
Dr. Moore?
Question, in terms of superintendent, how are we gathering data? Or how is Gear Up, how are they gathering data? Because I do see where we have ongoing supports in some of our tested areas. And I'm just wondering, are we gathering data there to find if Gear Up has been efficient with preparing our students?
Ms. House is gonna address that for you.
Okay, good evening. Okay, with the collection of data, they do collect data every year. So we're in the third year. So of course, the first year, which I had no part in the Gear Up planning and all of that. So we kind of like started this time last year when it was first brought before the board. So this is actually my first full year. And so I do know we have sent data from the tested areas. Ms. Jefferson, who is the liaison, she sends the data up. They collect test data, which would have been our 7th and 8th graders from last year. Because remember, it's a cohort. It started out with 6th and 7th graders. Last year was 7th and 8th graders. This year is 8th and 9th graders. So they're following the same cohort for the 7 years that the district signed into the agreement with Gear Up. And so the budget that you see before you is for this year for the 8th and 9th graders, which will cover 5 schools as opposed to the 3 schools. But there is like 3 sets of data, like I said, the discipline, the attendance, achievement data, templates that Ms. Jefferson has to complete annually to send up to Gear Up.
Any other questions, colleagues?
Ms. House, is it possible that we could, well, never mind, Mr. Brooks, is it possible that we could get maybe like a brief presentation at one of our work sessions from Gear Up to provide us with, data that has been aggregated?
We'll make that happen.
Okay, I do see where it says, several things, Ms. House has been ongoing. And an SEL, is that social emotional? Oh, no, that's the fall under that. That's correct. Oh, okay, social emotional.
Actually, that's a new piece, so
Okay.
it has not been included in the previous, but Gear Up had a new template that we had to follow, so you can see that plan that you have for you is more lengthier. It's lengthier than the previous one. So
Right.
they had actually a template where we had to just fill in and we had to adhere to their guidelines when completing the plan.
So social emotional learning is being taught?
It's a new piece that we're gonna try to implement. Remember, we just getting this back, so it'll be, the plan is October through September of next year. So nothing has been done as of yet. Until the plan has been approved by the
Okay.
board.
And so that SEL, that's for next year, really the whole plan, right?
Well, it's to start once the board has approved of it.
Okay.
Any other questions, colleagues? Hearing none? Thank you, Ms. House.
Dr. Moore, we'll try to get somebody here for the next board meeting to address your concerns.
And if not the board meeting, the next work session will be okay
Okay.
for me. I don't know about the rest of them, but for me, it'll be okay. Yeah. Thank,
12.6, Mr. Brooks.
Potential partnership services provided by Catholic Charities Incorporated.
Colleagues, are there any questions? Just two questions, Mr. Brooks. Do you know if there's a cost associated with this, or is there no cost?
None that I know of.
And if you could, just ask for an updated letter, because there's no name at the bottom. So I guess maybe during the conversation with the partnership, we'll learn who a contact person would be for the charities, okay?
I think that would be,
Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
go on. No.
no, go ahead.
Where, I see that it will be, on-site, a minimum of twice a week. Where would the location be?
We have to work that out.
Ms. Lewis, can you address that?
I don't know, legally, am I allowed to address that? Or would I need to have a representative here to do that?
So is there a particular question as to the Catholic Charities portion of what is being discussed?
Yes.
I presume that there will be a recusal somewhere down the road, so if you want to address it, that's fine.
You know the answer.
Okay, so what this letter is, it's just a sample letter that would be sent to each school, informing the schools of the services that are available. So this particular letter would not be a letter to the district. This is just a sample of what principals and counselors would be able to receive. And the services could be held at school, at our office, in the home, wherever is most convenient for the child that's receiving the services.
Any other questions, colleagues? Thank you, Ms. Lewis.
I do have one, it won't be on site like 24 hours a day.
On school, okay,
No.
at school, okay.
No other questions? All right, 12.7, Mr. Brooks.
Kiwanis Club facility use request.
Are there any questions, colleagues? Hearing no questions? 13.1, Mr. Brooks.
Mississippi Valley State University dual enrollment, MOA.
No, this will be the consent agenda. Are there any questions, colleagues, regarding 13.1? Hearing none, 13.2, Mr. Brooks.
TCAT Martin contractual services.
Questions, colleagues? Hearing none? 14.1, Mr. Brooks.
Approval of job description for food service coordinator.
Questions, colleagues?
Do have one question. Does food service currently have a secretary?
Yes.
No other questions? 14, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms.
yeah.
Lewis.
So this is a position that we're getting ready to hire for, is that correct? Can we just have like an overview of why this position is needed?
Is it okay with you, Mr. Brooks?
Sure. Ms. Totten, would you address that, please?
No, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Currently, there are only 2 people working in food service. That's me and a secretary. And there's a mammoth amount of paperwork that has to be done, on-site visits, and requirements from the State Department. And it's difficult for the 2 of us to get all of that done alone. So a third person is needed to make sure that we're doing everything on a timely basis and in a proper manner.
And Mr. Brooks, will this position be funded from food services?
It will be.
Okay.
Any other questions? No? Thank you, Ms. Totten. 14.2, Mr. Brooks.
Personnel recommendations.
And I believe, Mrs. Johnson, this is the DHA portion. I know Ms. Lewis had a question about additional staffing for that particular grant.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Johnson, I see that this position is for, is it a literacy coach?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Presently, we have instructional coaches at every school, correct?
Not in every school. They always sell the ones that, walk.
So what's going to be the difference between this position and the instructional coaches that we're already paying?
Okay, the primary difference is the instructional coaches is being paid now. They're, teaching as well. They're teaching a large part of the day. They're focusing primarily on our bottom 25. This literacy coach, and let me just say this, these are not additional positions. Initially in the, original grant, it was 5 content specialist positions that was out there. We actually removing 3 of those and just getting 1 person that will have the experience in the area of literacy, that will conduct PDs, instructional coaches. They, do not, do that. They primarily just focus on classroom instruction, but this person will be a coach for literacy and also work with the 2 content specialists that will be coming on board as well. So it's not, additional positions, actually it's a decrease. Instead of being 5, it's only 3.
Okay, so our person that conducts professional development does not conduct it in the area of ELA?
We do not have a ELA, per se, special, but we have the curriculum team and we do that, but I'm talking about with a literacy background. And this person will focus on 7th, 3rd, and 4th grade, which are our targeted area. We use the data to determine exactly where the deficiencies were in line to that, and then all point towards our foundational skills. Right now, we do have, some curriculum people that's going back, trying to get extra certification in that area. But in the meantime, DHA did agree to pay 100%, for all 3 of these positions, and they will focus on just aiding our 3rd grade and building the foundational skill, areas of deficiencies.
So we should see some better scores.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
You said they with a conviction.
Yes, ma'am. I mean, the work, even on today, I mean, we're making it happen with even what we have, at least right here, would definitely, give us that extra push that we need, to close those achievement gaps. And to be honest, we are focusing, we're excited about the city, but we are even more focused on teachers, children to read. We are working hard to make sure that the literacy, that area is actually
So do you foresee a decrease in the number of students that have to retest?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
Yes, I mean, because anytime you are focusing on foundation skills and building a strong foundation, the increase will be, like I said, will be sustainable, and then over time, I mean, you have to look at like the entire picture. If they cannot read, then standard-based instruction will not be as effective.
Oh, yeah.
So we're focusing on the foundation, and we're focusing on closing achievement gaps on every level.
Dr. Moore?
I do have a quick question. Ms. Johnson, how long will this particular funding be available for this particular job?
Yes, at least 3 more years. I mean, as long as we have the grant, it'll be on year 2, and I think it's a 5-year agreement.
So again, I think, Dr. Moore, you just piqued my interest. Attorney Palmer and Mr. Brooks, you remember the conversation where we had as it pertains to the position being grant funded and these persons being employed by the district? If the grant was to cease, we would be left to employ or cover those salaries. So can you all get together to just see how we move forward regarding it? You recall? Yes, sir. Gotcha. All right. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Any
So,
other
Ms.
questions?
Johnson, I do have one other question. So you propose that this person will work with the instructional coaches to ensure that they have the skill to work within their individual schools?
Right. I mean, the whole focus is sustainability. I mean, to bring people in, such as whoever, and we're not training from within, and then with the teacher turnover and so forth, we're working to grow and then have that continuity across the board. We have various coaches from the state that come once or twice a week. We want to make sure that they work through collaboration across the board to make sure that all of us actually on the same page, including our assistant teachers. Even the training that we did today was for assistant teachers, assistant principal, instructional coaches, and all, to make sure that everyone is hearing the same thing. We're one band, with one sound in the area of literacy.
Okay, we have just been criticized so in the past for being so top-heavy, and so we've got to be able to prove our point that these people are actually doing what they're supposed to do, and we're seeing some results. And sometimes when those results are shown, then it kind of quietens people.
I truly believe that there will be a silence in schools.
Okay.
I do. As of right now, we have a curriculum team that's made up like 5 individuals. And initially, previous administration, we know that it was at least double that number. Right now, and then when I say top heavy, those 2 content specialists, they really housed at the school. We were fortunate to get 3rd grade assistants in all schools except for 2. So these people will have these content specialists will be housed and with a primary focus at the school level. And it's only one that will be servicing all schools that perform on what we call issue.
Thank you.
Superintendent Brooks, how often does our, and I know what the trend is with the consulting firms, but I personally believe that if we send teachers to obtain professional development, I know they used to do that years ago, but I'm just wondering how often, or could we maybe reflect and look at possibly sending teachers away to obtain professional development? I'm hoping that our in-district professional development is efficient, and I do know sometimes our teachers, that kind of weighs them down, and I'm just wondering if we could send teachers.
We do that every day.
Okay.
Now, we're doing it every day.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions, colleagues?
I
Mrs.
do
Lewis?
have, since we're talking about data, do we have any data from the first 9 weeks? On the, assessments that were administered? Do we have any results of that?
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes, ma'am, it's ready, it's actually posted in the room over there, but we were also, I can give it to Mrs. Brooks for the equivalent package. But
Okay,
it's already posted in the data room right next to it.
yeah, I would like to have a copy. Okay.
Did you want to add something, Ms. Johnson? Yes, ma'am.
We're excited and not more you on it. I mean, concerning exposing them, we are year one into the HQIM. Mr. Brooks and Ms. House and so forth, they have afforded us the opportunity to allow our third grade teachers will be attending the literacy conference, in November, December. So that they can have an opportunity to actually see Frank in person. We're also doing, a road trip as well, where they can go and, see districts that may be in year 3 of the HQIM implementation. So you're exactly right. Networking, just seeing or being in the room, where collaboration continues to be built.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions, colleagues? Hearing none. 14.3, Mr. Brooks?
Personnel recommendations.
Are there any questions, colleagues? Mrs. Lewis?
Looking on page 80, the second person listed on there, that position, is that replacing anybody, or is that adding to, or what is this?
Ms. Griffin.
I think she's
Good afternoon.
Good
Is that the regular, the sheet that has the 2 names that are there? Is that the one? Actually, the second position is not replacing anyone. No one was there in that spot. The first position is replacing someone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. Any other questions, colleagues? Hearing none. 14.4, Mr. Brooks?
Personnel recommendations.
I don't see any personnel, Mr. Brooks.
The bus driver's salary
Okay,
scale.
gotcha. I'm sorry. Good to know. So that begins on page 84. Yes, sir. Thank you. Are there any questions, colleagues? Hearing none. 14.5, Mr. Brooks?
Personnel recommendations.
And this is for the teacher sign-on bonuses, which are included. The documentation is included. Questions, colleagues? Hearing none? All right, 14.6 is actually a duplicate of 14.1, so we will omit that. That's correct? No, I'm sorry. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. All right, I'm sorry. There's actually a recommendation for an individual for that position. So 14.6, Mr. Brooks.
Food service position and salary, coordinator position and salary.
Should there be a individual's name, Ms. Remmer? The recommendations for,
No, at the bottom of the page. Superintendent.
Dr. Bailey, I think it's at the bottom of
I
that
see.
sheet.
Thank you all, thank you. Any questions, colleagues? Hearing none. 14.7.
Approval of the day and dates for contracts and at wills.
And that begins on page 94. Any questions, colleagues? Hearing none. 14.8, Mr. Brooks.
Approval of the 2023-24 winter sports recommendations.
And those recommendations begin on page 97. Questions, colleagues? Hearing none. Number 15, Mr. Brooks.
Monthly financial report.
And Ms. Thomas is out, correct?
Yes.
So colleagues, if there are any questions about the monthly financial report, if you will, just please email Mr. Brooks and Ms. Remmer. Is that okay? And that you all can forward those to Ms. Thomas. Is that okay? Colleagues, is that okay with you all?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Ms. Lewis, did you get that? Ms. Thomas was out, but I was able to get that for you.
It's not conclusive of, is it all schools?
It should be. She said that she gave that to you all at the last board meeting, but I guess it wasn't.
I don't see, any elementary schools.
The fundraiser part's on the back page for elementary school. It doesn't.
Yeah, but we don't have any
Yeah,
elementary
it doesn't
schools.
separate.
And
It
I
doesn't-
think all schools have activity funds, right?
I don't think so. Well, if they do, we'll get that for you.
Okay.
And Ms. Abraham, the item that you asked to be added to the agenda,
It was taken care of.
it was taken care of. It's somewhere, I'm looking through the
Thank you.
financials, but I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
appreciate it.
I saw it when I initially looked at it, but I can't find it.
That's okay.
Colleagues, is there anything else that needs to be discussed?
Dr. Bailey, if I
Yes.
may, very briefly. Ms. Lewis, I did research the enhanced carry policy issue. I looked through the Attorney General's opinion. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I looked through the Attorney General's opinions, and basically what the Attorney General's opinion says is this. If a person has an enhanced carry permit, right, and that's a specialty permit, then they would be able to carry in any public places or within a school district, such as football field, game, etc., basketball game, public events. The Attorney General's opinion also says that the school could prohibit an enhanced carry permit holder in non-public places in the school district, such as a classroom and things of that nature. the Attorney General opinion also say that a school district regarding an employee can restrict an enhanced carry permit holder from carrying any weapon on school premises so long as it is either in the policy that prevents that, or if their contract specifically states that as an employee of the district, you understand that you can't carry a firearm on school property. And it also says that if a person violated that particular provision, an enhanced carrier of a permit that was employed by the district did violate, they carried on the school premises anyway, and it was a violation of their contract, they would not be in violation of state law, but they would be subject to school disciplinary options for violating their contract. But I would provide those Attorney General's opinions to the school board as well as the superintendent just for your perusal information.
So with what you just said, does that, it doesn't sound like it applies to him, to this gentleman. Because if the law says with an enhanced permit, he can go into any public place. My understanding, he was trying to go into a game, correct?
That's my understanding.
So does that, how does that apply to this?
So let me ask you this, because I don't know the full details.
I just read what's in the pad.
Understand. Is he an employee of the district?
I don't think so.
Okay. So presuming he's not an employee of the district, based upon the Attorney General's opinions that I read, he would be permitted by state law to enter a game, which would be a public event, be it that he's not an employee, he's a member of the public, but he does have an enhanced permit carry license.
And my concern is that we don't, again, safety is the ultimate concern, but we can't violate people's rights either.
Understood. And again, I'll say this. Attorney General's opinions are not the law, but if a district, a person follows the Attorney General's opinion, they are shielded from liability for following that opinion. But I will provide those Attorney General's opinions to the board as well as the superintendent for your information.
Does our policy need to reflect any of that, because it has no language of enhanced carry?
Ms. Lewis, I will look at that as well.
Okay.
And get back with the board at the next board meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
I do have a question, Ms. Lewis. Earlier, when we were discussing this particular request, you stated that you spoke with MSBA. Is our policy not aligned with MSBA's policy in that regard?
I didn't read MSBA's policy, but I know this enhanced carry, according to their attorney, came about a couple of years ago. And I think these policies were put into place at consolidation 2019. So it does not have that language in there.
And I'm just trying to figure out, Attorney Palmer, if MSBA has updated it since 2019, would we need to?
Now, interestingly, the Attorney General's opinions that I read are from, I think, 2019, 2018, in that area. I did not see any Attorney General's opinions that were on point, that were more recent than that. And what that generally tells me is that there has not been a significant change in the law to dictate someone getting a new opinion based upon a newly passed law. So I don't have any information showing that the status of the law is any different from the Attorney General's opinions that were issued during those particular years.
Any more questions regarding this, colleagues? Okay. We have discussed, Attorney Palmer, we did discuss our consideration for executive session on November the 14th. I only know of one particular item to be discussed.
Madam Vice Chair, this is my understanding that I will be in a position to give the board an update on one executive session matter that I'm aware of. So I'll update the board accordingly. And it shouldn't take that long for what I have to update the board on.
Okay, and if I'm not mistaken, I think we were to add the timeline to the executive session.
If that comes under executive session, that's what it said.
Yeah,
I think more specifically, it was.
for us to
another
discuss it
interim.
further.
Another interim.
Right, but we were gonna discuss that in executive session. I think that's what I'm trying to
So,
finalize here.
yes, ma'am. So it would depend on what that issue is.
Okay.
But I know that the issue that I would need to address the board with would affect potentially the timeline.
Okay, thank you.
You what?
If there are no other questions from the table or from our executive staff here, the work session for October 25th, 2023 is now adjourned. Thank you.